Greetings, Alnadi viewers. I'm very happy to have again our masters Ara Dinkjian here with me. Thank you very much for accepting the invite again.
Thank you for having me, Fadil. Thank you.
Actually, our first episode was very much well received and many people talked about it. And I had a very good and positive feedback on that. Now we will talk about a very interesting topic today. We'll talk with the Armenian about Armenian music.
Well, this is a big topic.
Yeah, actually, let's start with a very simple question, Master. What is the spirit of an Armenian music? What is Armenian music?
Yeah, there's no simple way to answer it, but I will do my best. First of all, I think it would be safe to say that Armenian music is music made and expressed by Armenians.
Yes.
I know that sounds very simple, but we have to start with that basic, fundamental fact. The way it becomes complicated is that Armenians, as you know, are spread throughout the world. So we cannot point to one sound and say, this is Armenian music, because it is only one part of the whole story of what is Armenian music.
Mm-hmm.
So I can tell you that some of the categories are religious, ashur music, which is minstrel or troubadour. The Turkish word is ashuk.
Yes.
There's Western classical music written by Armenians. There's folk music, of course. There's pop music. And then with each of these categories, as we go to some of the main areas where Armenians have settled, of course, we have Armenia proper, but we also have Turkey and America. And in each of these cases, the music sounds completely different. So you have all these categories and all these geographies. And so it becomes a very large question with not a simple answer.
Okay. Now, if we go for the common factor, so if there are some traits or some ways that we can identify or pinpoint to a music and we say, oh, this is Armenian, or it has some Armenian flavor. What could be some of these traits to somebody who doesn't know Armenian
music?
This is
a wonderful question.
Yeah.
And again, despite the fact that it's difficult to define it, I can tell you that for the most part, one of the things that Armenian music has in common, even amongst all those categories, is a very strong melody. And in many cases, if not most cases, that melody is a bit melancholy or emotional. And like so many other musics around the world, harmony was not an issue until we could say somewhere in the 1900s, maybe a little before that, because that was more of a Western European factor. So what we had prior to that is a melody that was strong unto itself, that really touched the heart and spoke of the experience of the Armenian people. So I think even as the Armenians had to disperse and travel and relocate throughout the world, that one factor of the strong melody remained. And if I may say this, without being conscious of it, as I grew to establish myself as a composer, as I look back now, I see that for me, melody was the most important thing. And it's interesting because currently, in some of the popular musics in the West, not only the melody is not important, it is absent. There is no melody. And this is not a criticism, it's just an observation.
Yes.
Of course, art is always changing and developing, and that's fine, and I support that. But I think we can say that melody was the most important thing for Armenians.
Yeah, I'll go into maybe the rhythms in a while, but I have some philosophical question, Master. Isn't it music all about emotions? It's the language of emotions, isn't it? I mean, uh, without a melody, how can we express emotions? Will we say that, for example, the pop culture is not reflecting an emotion? It's maybe carrying a message or a story or some lyrics.
I would not say that pop music does not express emotions. I think they do. It's just a different language, maybe one that we may not understand or agree with. But no, I believe that it's just a different dialect or language. But you bring up a very interesting point. What is it about music that has this power to reach across oceans, and probably if we all existed on different planets, I believe it would reach other planets. What is that phenomenon? How does that happen? I don't have the answer. I know I'm grateful to have that language because there are, well, you just said that you mentioned me to some other people. Probably we don't even speak the same language, and yet through music, we are making this connection and this brotherhood. This may sound a little melodramatic, but I believe if there is a possibility of peace in the world, it is through something exactly like music, where it is that one place where we can all agree, we can all meet, we all meet in the same place together and have the same reaction, which tells us what we have in common. So if we have something in common, anything is possible.
Yeah. Now, going back to the idea of emotion and melody, I once has maybe demonstrated or showed some Armenian music to somebody who doesn't know about it, and he said this reminds me of Iraqi music, or maybe some kind of same flavor, and actually this richness of melody and maybe having some sort of sadness or deep expression of experience, maybe that's the most popular thing that people listen to without maybe saying that explicitly. Sadness.
Well, I may have mentioned this in our last meeting, but music is not something that occurs on a stage where there is a physical distance between the listener. Music is not something that we buy at the store, put on at our home, listen. Music, at least for centuries, was what we did when somebody died. We sang this song when somebody died. We sang this song to ask God to make it rain so that we can grow our food. It was the song that we sang to put our baby to sleep.
Yeah.
In other words, it was music with a function in our life. And not a product, in other words, just essential, just as food and water. For so many of our cultures, music was absolutely as essential as food and water. They did it without being conscious of what it was. As a matter of fact, I have read that in certain cultures, for example, in certain tribes in Africa, there is no word for music because it is not separate from what they do every day. And I think that's unbelievable. It's like they speak, they eat, they sing. It's all the same. It's living. It's being human. So I think this is one of the things that, was important, certainly to the Armenians and certainly to so many other cultures, and probably helped them to survive over the generations. We have all peoples have suffered difficult times, and this was one of the ways that I'm sure they survived.
Interesting. And these emotions are maybe cascaded into a story-like melody. As you said, it's a very rich melody. So people who get used to understand this language could see the progress of the idea throughout the melody from A to Z. And it's not a basic idea. That's why we call it rich melody, isn't it?
Yes, and like I mentioned, the ashos or the kusans, these troubadours or minstrels that would travel from village to village, they were singing historic stories to remind us of our foundation, and they were also singing current events, almost like a living newspaper. These are fascinating aspects of what music was, and to some degree still is, But of course, with technology and progress, so many of the things have been blurred or changed, and in some cases have completely disappeared. But it's one of the reasons why I'm as you know, a fanatical collector of the old records. Not because I want to reproduce that sound in my own playing, because I know that's impossible. We are at a different time in history. I'm in a different place. Everything is different. But to at least know what is the foundation that I'm standing on. The earliest sounds we can hear are those antique records. Of course, music existed way before that, but we can only read of what it might have sounded like.
Interesting. What about the rhythm for Armenians? Are there some kind of unique or maybe most favorable rhythms that are commonplace?
Sure. And when it comes to rhythms, and for that matter, intonation, modes, makam, things like that, I believe many of the answers lie in the geography. Because if there were Armenians near the Black Sea, there was a certain rhythm. If there were Armenians like where my ancestors are from, Diyarbakir and Harput, there was 10-8. But if you go a little further east into the Caucasus, it's 6-8. And I mean, to me, it's geographic. People go to war over whose rhythm is that and whose melody is that. I choose to look at it as a geographic thing because we either shared the land at some time or were there at one time. And the music, I believe, comes from the earth. The rhythm comes from the earth. And from the sky. In other words, from the geography.
Interesting. And one more thing, Master. The forms that are commonplace in Armenian music. What kind of forms?
Yeah, I'm going to stop just for a moment to say to you, you're very respectful, and you always call me master. And at a couple of times I've said, please, I'm not a master. I'm a student of life. But you insist. And, I want it to be on the record, so to speak, that, I don't consider myself a historian, an intellect. Actually, most of what I am telling you is as a result of listening to these antique records and just noticing what I hear. So many of the books are written, the analytical books of this kind of history are written in languages that I don't speak. So, I rely on the recordings. But nonetheless, I'm not trying to avoid your question.
I use the word master because of the experience I see.
Okay, yes.
So allow me.
I am significantly older than you, and I accept it that
Not
way.
about age, it's about experience.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Sure.
So, regarding the form, again, we have to go back to the categories and the geography because the minstrels sang in a certain form.
Yeah.
The folk musicians sang in a different form. Of course, religious music has its own categories and forms. And by the way, besides playing the oud all my life, I've been the Armenian church organist for over 50 years. So I'm very familiar with the sacred music. And to me, again, it's all about the melody.
Yeah.
It's just, it kind of reminds me, blues and gospel. Sometimes they have the same melody, but they are certainly cultural, two different categories. But as a musician, I can listen to both and fall in love with the melody. And these melodies exist everywhere.
Yeah. Interesting. I think it's good to have our listeners maybe go through listening experience after this interview and go explore, maybe find some good books. It was really difficult to find an Armenian music book that can really give an in-depth experience, and my only way was listening and then observing and maybe some piece here and there. And thanks for the good albums that we have seen for you and others. But maybe let's go and touch into the evolution, or maybe what has changed in the Armenian music. Maybe we had an overview now in this earlier discussion. But I'm sure the Armenian music is not one sort of form, and it has changed throughout history. Maybe one aspect was the location, the circumstances, time, the westernization factor, whatever it is. Maybe give us an overview on that from your perspective, Master, and then maybe I have a few questions.
Sure. From my perspective, the major event in the history of the Armenian people, which of course affected everything, including the music, were the events during World War I, 1915, where there was, we can say, a genocide of the Armenians in eastern Turkey, and this resulted in either deportation or relocation or what have you. So as they wound up in France or Beirut or New York or South America, these new homes, once they got settled, of course, dramatically affected what music they were going to write and sing. I mean, just to take America as an example, because this is where I was born, the first Armenians that would come here, once they got settled and wanted to have a little, we say kef, a little good time, they would go to the music store and, let's say, ask for a zurna. Hey, buddy, this is America. There's no zurna here. We have clarinet. Okay, give me the clarinet. Do you have darbuka? There's no darbuka here. We have a cocktail drum. Okay, give me that. So they would make their music on whatever it is they could find, and then what resulted was a music that didn't sound like that anywhere else other than in America. It has its own dialect. To me, this is absolutely fascinating. And recently, I compiled a 3 CD set that was released on Kalan records in Turkey, called Armenians in America on 78 RPM. So I don't know, maybe 60 or 70 songs recorded in the 1910s, 20s, and 30s and 40s in America. They're singing in Armenian, Turkish, and Kurdish. And you hear the earliest ones sound like they might have sounded in Turkey, but as the years go by, you start to hear the American influence. And there's even a couple of songs where the guy is playing harmonica. with the makam.
Okay.
It's absolutely fascinating because that's the instrument that he found, you know. So of course we're always affected by our environment and our country or the rules or laws of the country.
Yeah. By the way,
what's available.
This is published already. The album you mentioned.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll send you a link so you could see, and they're all on YouTube and everything. I should have shown those to you.
Okay, sure. Then we will share this with our viewers later on. Okay, and so location has, for example, impacted the Armenians in their music. Whatever taste of music has they maybe exposed themselves to, or maybe the circumstances impacted them, or maybe forced them to change a bit here or there, or maybe they influenced other people, right? Not just being impacted by others, maybe they impact others.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, the great ones, no matter who you are, the great ones impact those around you. Like we could say in Turkey, Tateos Efendi affected all the musicians and singers. And not just in Turkey, throughout the Arab world. Everybody knows Tateos and the Semais.
Yes.
So, yeah, of course. But we also know Cemil Bey's compositions. So the great ones, they stand out no matter who or where they are.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Now, if we go, for example, to the example of Komitas as an example of somebody who wanted to preserve the Armenian music but in a westernization flavor, or maybe the impact of the westernization or influence of it on the Armenians.
Gomidas is, as you know, a huge figure, if not the biggest figure in the history of Armenian music. And he had several goals. One being to document the folk songs. He was born in Turkey and traveled and notated many of the folk songs. He also believed that there was a unique character not only to Armenian melodies, and I use the word unique in its strongest sense, unique from anything else, but he also believed that there was a unique Armenian harmony different from other harmonies. For example, some of us are familiar with for example, the male chorus harmonies from Georgia, or the woman's harmonies from Bulgaria. These are unique senses of harmony. Gomidas believed that the Armenians had their unique harmony, and through his works and compositions and his arrangements of folk melodies, he did indeed, of course he studied Western harmony, but he wanted to demonstrate and define what he felt was unique Armenian harmonies. And some of it has deeply influenced me in my own writing, you know. I start with a melody, but then I'm not satisfied with that. I want to bring the harmonic color, but I don't want it to sound like it's just Western. I want it to feel like it belongs, and that it would be empty without it.
Yeah.
So Gomidas had a tremendous influence on some of my work also.
Interesting. And I have seen maybe some of the efforts of Armenian who had transcribed the music. I don't know how far they go in history. Some of them are really very old. But when they put them into the score, they just ignore the makam thing. So they even sound, we call them, this is a Siga piece, or a Bayati or rest, but maybe it's not. When we hear it as makam listeners, we could imagine maybe we have to change it a bit to sound like Rust or Siga, isn't it?
Yeah, this has this has always bothered me, and I've tried to understand why that has happened. But you're absolutely right; it has happened. I mean, part of the reason might have to do with history and not wanting to associate with a certain part of history or a certain geography. But I have this blessed advantage of not having experienced hunger or fear or war or hatred. I was born in New Jersey. So I don't know those things. So I had the freedom to claim those sounds, those maqams, not as mine, but part of my world. My people had something to do with that, and I'm proud of that. And I don't, again, I'm not claiming it as an Armenian invention or property, but history is written. History shows that we were at least part of that story. So those sounds, before I intellectually understood what I'm telling you, I would take my instrument and play those sounds, not knowing that that's Bayati, but that sounded right to me. So my body was responding to those sounds. And I think that innocence shines a certain truth. Why am I responding to that? I think it's because I'm carrying the blood and genetics of my ancestors. I was born here, but I could have just as easily have been born there. So at the very least, they are part of me. And those sounds were part of them.
Interesting. So for this kind of music, luckily maybe we have some recordings for them. But if we go back for these maybe scores, are we allowed, let's say, because they were allowing moving them from whatever sound, the original sound it was, the form it was, into this score where we label it as Siga, but it is not. So the melody has changed, even though it's a rich melody, it has a rich form, it has maybe the emotions of the Armenians, but it has changed for some reason. Are we allowed to take it back to some imagined original flavor?
I don't know of any laws or rules that prevent us from doing that. And forgive me for repeating myself, but this is why I go back to the early recordings, because the evidence is there. For example, I have students, and when I transcribe pieces for them to learn, I have an order in which I do it. If there is a recording of the composer performing that piece, that's what I transcribe, with the assumption that the composer knows the correct intonation, rhythm, everything. Of course.
Wonderful, yes.
But in the case of, if a piece is so old that there is no recording of the composer performing, then I go back to the earliest recording of it that I have, because, as you know, as each year continues, things become, I'll use the word distorted, changed. I don't want to use the word wrong, but it's constantly changing and going other places.
Right.
So I try to go back to the earliest one where there was the least amount of change. And that's what I transcribe. Now a student might say, wait a minute, that's not right. And I'll say, well, maybe that's not how they play it now, but this recording from 1917, this is how they were playing it. So let's start with that. And at least you know how they were playing it. Then whatever you're going to do is your business. But here we go. This is where we're going to start.
Yeah. And when we go to these recordings, Master, and see, for example, the Turkish influence, the pop culture influence, the wherever, like the geography or maybe whatever the media was impacting the sound, the rhythms, the forms, maybe the stories being sung, right? can we maybe, is that visible to you? I'm sure you have seen many recordings by now. Is this visible, and so people can easily categorize and put by location, by time and location, by maybe the ethnic, sub-ethnics? Is it possible?
I believe it's very possible. I mean, you close your eyes, you just listen, and you say, this person was listening to Abdul Wahab. I'm sure of it. I feel it.
Yeah.
Or this person has to be from Iran. Maybe they're Armenian, but the way they phrase, they have to be from Iran. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be right. Because we cannot hide who we are.
Sure.
Again, forgive me for bringing myself, but I'm the only thing that I'm sure of. I know when I play, it's pretty obvious. I'm not born in Turkey. I'm not born in Armenia. And yet, those elements are there, along with something that we can say has to be from the West. And that's right. That's my history. To various degrees. As long as we're being honest with each other while we play or compose, we cannot do any more than that. We cannot try to hide any part of who we are, any part of our history. This is my own feeling.
Interesting. And how about the actual living of playing a piece that's not ours? This is maybe a very interesting question now. For example, I have seen you playing Sas Samai of Husseini of Andun, Lavdaji Andun, right? You play it your own, and you are an Armenian born in America. And the next day, maybe you play your own composition. Later on, you play some Jamil Bey thing. So, what really remains there if we are honest with ourselves playing the piece, and with the barrier of not maybe distorting the composers?
Right.
Yeah.
First of all, when I choose what I'm going to play, I try not to think too much. I try to respond to the attraction that I have towards the piece.
Yeah.
This is very important, so that when I'm going to play it, there's 2 sides going on. There's the profound love and respect for the piece and the composer, and wanting to honor them.
Yeah.
But the way to honor them is not to try to copy them, because you will fail. The way to honor them is to display that their melody is an international melody that can be loved and understood and reacted to by everybody. They say a great melody can be arranged in an endless number of styles of music. So, for example, the Beatles wrote some beautiful melodies. You can play it like jazz. You could play it like rock. You could arrange it for classical orchestra. Because a beautiful melody is a beautiful melody. So, yeah, I mean, I have to, if you try to do anything other than who you are, you're going to sound inauthentic or insincere, even worse.
Yeah, I really like this thing when you said honest to ourselves, because there is a big debate, and that really triggered the question of people saying, how come you play a Turkish music in an Arabic style, or an Armenian, and you know these things, and this is natural. We speak English now. I'm speaking English in my own accent.
Right.
And people don't maybe criticize me. Maybe they are tolerant for one reason or another. But I think it's the same thing for English. For music, provided the factor of experience and understanding and interpretation.
I have an LP, a record of Feyruz, maybe at Baalbek, one of the festivals.
Yeah.
One of those 3 LP, because the musical was very long,
Yeah.
And of course I don't understand Arabic, but at one point in the story, an Armenian girl comes onto the stage and sings a song in Armenian. Now, maybe the singer was an Arab, but the song she was singing and the language was Armenian. And it was an Armenian folk song that I know very well. I grew up with that folk song. But it's played by that fantastic Arab orchestra with those instruments in that style of Rabbani brothers, that style.
Okay.
And when I heard it, I was screaming, and I had my father come over. Dad, listen to this. The Arab orchestra is playing it. And it was like such a joy to hear it interpreted in a way that we would have never thought, because they're actually honoring the melody by doing it in their style. It's not disrespect, just the opposite.
Interesting, because some people take the negative side of it, and I love this actually, and this is like endless. Every time we play the same piece, maybe the same artist play the same piece, different times, different setups, different arrangement. I don't know how many in that ensemble. It will be something new. Every time we execute it, it's something new. That's a trait of our music, and people should be happy about this. I really like this way of seeing it. How do we explore the Armenian music? Now, we talked about it in general, about the influences, about the maybe big amount of records that are out there from the different regions and different time. How do we explore it?
Well, if you allow me, I wrote down on a piece of paper in front of me some categories and some geographies with some names. And if you allow me to say them, anybody who wants to further explore could then go and explore these names. I think it's very much. It's a basic foundation of some of the important artists and composers.
Interesting.
So, in Armenian religious music, the 2 major composers were Magar Yegmalian and Gomidas Vartabed. Again, you can take these names, type them in your computer, and explore if you want. Amongst the ashuls, or the troubadours, there's a very important name, Sayat Nova.
Wow.
He was born in Georgia in 1712. And his poems and melodies we are still performing today, 300, 400 years later. So Sayat Nova, which I have learned translates to song hunter. Isn't that beautiful?
Yes.
Okay, so for the troubadours, his music is the most important.
Yeah.
For Western classical music, the 2 important names are Aram Khachadurian and Alan Hovanes. Again, you can explore these things. Pop music. For those who want to hear Armenian pop music, the pioneer was Adis Harmandian, who was born in Beirut. And when he started using electric guitar, electric organ, drums, electric bass, this was a revolution. In some cases, a violent revolution. This is not music. But his impact, 50 years later, is still going strong. So his name was very important. In Armenia, I need to mention 3 singers that were so important. Hovanes Badalyan, Lusik Kochian, and Rupen Matevosyan. These voices were the voices of the Armenians in Armenia. Very important, very beautiful singers. And the composers, Tatul Altunyan and Aram Merangulyan. They composed many of the pieces that, again, we still perform today. In Turkey, of course, we have Tateos Efendi. We have Bimen Shen, a very important composer, probably my favorite. There's a name, Hampartsum Limonjan. We call him Baba Hampartsum, he was born in 1768. He actually devised the first notational system in Turkey. So he was a composer, but also devised this notational system that there are still many people who can read. Yeah. And of course, I need to mention Udi Hrant, who is very important for us.
Yeah. Wonderful.
And, yes. And so these are just names that we can, and you'll see that it's very diverse, different sounds, different elements of Armenian music, but you can explore them if you want.
Yeah, that would be really a great guide to our viewers. This is really a great world to explore. And what about some instruments and maybe instruments that are Armenian nature?
There's a great debate about that. One scholar told me, Armenian scholar told me that really, if there is any instrument that is solely, uniquely Armenian, it's some kind of a flute, like a kaval or sırink or something. And I said, what about the duduk? They said, probably not, although the Armenians are known for the duduk. Again, because I'm not a historian, and I don't have, Fadil, I tell you from my heart, I don't have the energy or the desire to claim or to prove. This to me becomes boring. It's much more important to listen to how does an Armenian play the duduk versus somebody else. That's more interesting than who created it or where does it belong. That kind of does not interest me.
My last interview with our master Kutsi Urguner.
Yes.
We were talking about some of the very old books and some researchers and manuscripts. He said they are good, but I love the music much more. I love the performance.
Bravo.
Now this is emphasized.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But at least, those that are really commonly used or commonly performed with, music performed with or maybe expressed with.
Yes, well, in Armenia, of course, duduk, kemençe, but, again, kemençe, there's 4 or 5 different categories of kemençe.
Yes.
Ours is the round one. This was the instrument of Sayat Nova.
Yes.
The tar, which is slightly different from the Persian tar, but in that same family.
Yeah.
Kanun, it's interesting. In Armenia, the kanun is more considered a woman's instrument. And then, of course, there's some percussion, the whole and things like that. Yeah. That's Armenia. If you go to Turkey, it's different. If you go to America, it's different, the instruments.
Yes. Yes. And when we say some famous instrumentalists,
well,
would you mention some of your favorite ones that?
Well, in Turkey, it would be Udi Hrant. He came to America for the first time in 1950 and left such an impact that in his wake, I'm not exaggerating, there are hundreds of Armenian oud players over the generations since he came here. And I believe he's the one who made that spark, who started all of that.
Yeah.
So he was just so important. In America, of course, we have generations of Armenian musicians. But I have to mention my father. I don't care what that sounds like. My father, Ara Dinkjian, is known throughout the world as a great Armenian folk and liturgical singer.
Yes.
He's 93 years old, and so help me, 2 months ago, he sang a gig. He sang for 4 hours. He's 93 years old. Yes. God bless him, and he's my greatest influence. And of course, I could mention dozens of other names, but for fear of missing somebody and hurting their feelings.
Interesting. So, Master, let's maybe delve into some of the selections of the records, like of your taste, and maybe talk about them a bit so we can enjoy them together.
Sure. I'm going to start by showing you a record which was recorded in 1910. It's for a German company called Favorite. It was recorded in Constantinople.
Mm-hmm.
The artist is B. Krikor. That happens to be my grandfather's name also. Krikor. And he's singing Hoy Nazanam. And the reason why I'd like to play this record for you is because it has kemençe, but not the Armenian kemençe, the Turkish kemençe, and kanun, and he's singing the real makam, and I have versions of this. If you don't mind, I'm just going to grab something. It takes 1 second.
Sure.
I have this very old sheet music. It's written in Armenian and in Turkish. It's advertising a concert in Turkey of the works of Gomidas. And there's an arrangement of Hoy Nazanam.
Wow.
But this is, because it's Gomidas's arrangement, it is without any microtones.
Interesting.
So it's completely different. What I'd like for you to hear is this 1910 version of this. And we can only imagine this is how it sounded back then.
Which makam is this, Master?
So it's like Husseini.
Wow, this is the most favorite then. That's Armenian.
I
would say that's Armenian.
Yes, exactly. So a very precious, a very rare record. And so let's listen to it now.
Okay, let's enjoy it.
Oy nazanem, nazanem, ya nazanem, nazanem, yaşan tuparo vegar, kalbir solero vegar, gana sarero vegar, yaşan tuparo vegar, gana solero vegar, khor khor solero vegar. Arebe gayne gesol, dekele yarocan. Dim gelin kalacak ben, dekele yarocan. Karman sirur zavi piyes, hoy nazanem, nazanem, nafsun sisemi piyes. Kan nazanem, nazanem, yarşan tuparo vegar, karmi solero vegar, khor khor solero vegar, yarşan tuparo vegar, karmi solero vegar, khor khor solero vegar. Azev gayne gesol, dekele yarocan. Azev gayne gesol, dekele yarocan. Dim yarın kalacak ben, dekele naracan. Dim yarın kalacak ben, dekele yarocan.
All right. What else can we listen to? Like one of the
Yes.
selections, and why?
So let's now listen to a different category. This time, a woman. Her name is Flora Mardirosyan, and she's singing "Kele Lao," which means "Walk, my child." And she's accompanied by Duduk, and it is. We were talking about melancholy and emotional, and the makam is not a Turkish makam, but I will say this is my own interpretation. It is definitely an Armenian makam.
What is that?
Which is different from Arabic, which is different from Turkish, which is different from Persian. There is something that I try to play with my own oud playing, and this Flora Mardirosyan's recording is comes very close to what I try to do also. So let's listen now to Kele Lao.
Let's do. in this second example, Master, maybe this is a very precious lesson that we learn from the old records, where we had recently a lot of debate about the intervals, the location of the mi, below or above, this is Turkish, this is Arabic. I mean, let's ignore all of this noise and maybe produce a great music, isn't it?
Sure. When we're listening to great music that is moving us, we're lost. We're not analyzing, we're lost. And I think that's the important thing. Myself, I try not to analyze, but to play it where it resonates in my body. Somebody else can analyze it. They might say the Arab plays it flatter, the Turk plays it a little sharper, you're playing it a little sharper. Oh, really? I didn't know, but that's where I feel it. That's where I feel it. And as long as it's sincere, this is how I feel it. Now, some people may not like it. But the people who like it, okay, then we're feeling the same thing. You cannot please everybody, but you have to react to what you're playing, what you're feeling. How else can you play?
And what about when we see a rendering of a piece, maybe by different masters?
Well, I had heard once that somebody made a comment that even amongst the great masters, sometimes a particular maqam is so beautifully interpreted by one of them that even though the others could play it so well, they say, let him do the taqsim because his huzam is different. It's something special. So I find that to be so interesting. And indeed, I think each one of us have a certain maqam or two that we feel so comfortable and home with. And who knows the reason? I think I have an idea that the answer is in the blood of our ancestors, in our history. But if we don't want to analyze it, let's just feel it and respond to it.
And I think maybe that's extendable to the ornaments, to the intervals, to maybe the way we phrase things out as artists. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, as we're young and we're listening and hearing so much music, we're attracted to that guy does this. I love when he does that. This other guy, his intonation is different. I like that. This other guy, he plays slow. That's kind of interesting. So what we do is we take unique things that we like and maybe add a few of our own things, and that unique combination of what we like becomes our identity as a musician. Nobody else has the same selections or choices.
Yeah, now we take this sheet of what we call it a scale or whatever standard in this region or that region and put it aside and enjoy our music. That's human nature music.
Exactly right.
Interesting. So, Master, let's have a third example of your records.
Sure. Let's go back to Turkey, and a name that amongst the musicians is legendary, Kemani Nubar Tekyay.
Wow.
I call him the Yorgo of the violin. His technique, his intonation, his tone, his mastery was unparalleled. And if it's okay, we'll listen to his Segya Taksim from his 78.
Wonderful, will do. Let's do it. Thank you very much, Master. So now that we picked the three great examples of different flavors, different intervals, different personalities, let's maybe hit into the idea of microtones. How do you see that, Master?
Well, like I said, I think it's part of nature, and to ignore it, I think, well, you should never ignore nature. It's the one thing we can rely on, even if we don't understand it. And really, for example, black music has its microtones.
Okay.
And I'm white, but when I hear black music, I respond to it. And I think part of the reason is that it exists in nature. And I'm saying nature because of the harmonic series. The harmonic series is not well tempered like the piano. It's much more complex and has those microtones. And so I'm proud that our cultures, if not intellectually, certainly in an emotional way, we're in tune with that.
Interesting. And people say that sometimes when something gets enforced in a generation, it gets rejected. Then the next generation just accept it. Like we accepted the tempered scale. We can't accept anything. But luckily that these options are available today to maybe experience and learn and maybe adapt.
Right.
I think we are lucky today, and maybe we are more tolerant than we were before.
Yes, and with all of its dangers, the computer still does offer unparalleled access to these ancient sounds. People have put these 78s on the internet, and it's there for us to explore and to learn from. It's a great treasure.
Yeah. And actually, thank you very much, Master, for sharing all this experience with us and these exotic records. And I would like to conclude with one of your pieces. And I have a selection this time.
Which one is that?
Even If You Leave.
Wow. So,
I love it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
If I may just say a couple of words about that. It's a love song for my wife. And it is in 10/8, which is the rhythm of my ancestors. And it's Husseini, but the Armenian Husseini, where the second note is a little sharper than the Turk and much sharper than the Arab. Not consciously, but that's where I hear it. And the same way Gomidas wanted to define certain things of what it was to be Armenian, through my music, I try to define what it is to be an Armenian in America. So this piece has the makam and the melody very much in the past. It's like almost an ancient melody, but the harmonic color is very Western. They're jazz harmonies. The trick, my life's work, is how to add the harmonic color to makam without offending the makam. This is not easy. It's not supposed to be east and west taking turns. It's supposed to be something married. Oh, that was the goal of this piece.
Wonderful. We'll listen to it, but before that, I really thank you again, Master, and for sure we will have another meeting soon.
Thank you, Fadil, for all you do to bring us all together, and I wish you the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
جان